Good morning, Trumptopia! Are you awake yet? It is the 4th of July, 2017. We are marking the end of the 240th year of the United States of America. And, depending on your opinion, the first, or 241st, the first year of Trumptopia. Marking the end of 240 years of America and celebrating the first year of Trumptopia. Today's segment, we will be discussing how our postmodern culture deals with freedom, the history of oppression, endless war, and other such interesting subjects. Let's get started, huh? Awesome track. It's a bit long, isn't it? That was Lion's Heaven by Art of Escapism, available for anyone to use for free at freemusicarchive.org. A collection of music, an archive of music put together by folks who want to facilitate creative individuals that need sound editing material. Good morning, Trumptopia. I am your host, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. Today is one of those days where I just don't know which way to start and which way to go off on. And let me preface this by saying that I love and appreciate and respect America and Americans, and I really love and appreciate and respect one of the cultural institutions here, and that is free speech and the freedom within, covered by free speech to poke fun at and openly criticize our own culture, our own society, our own political system, our own government, our own cultural norms, etc., etc. Right? Let's remember that. Let's celebrate that. Having said all that, I'm one of those people that generally is wildly irritated by statism. I probably, I'm one of those people that gets accused of being a left-wing liberal by anybody that's, in the middle of the spectrum and over to the right. And accused simultaneously of being some kind of weird, irrational statist or right-winger. Well, I guess both sides of the thing have their statism, right? Because there's a lot of things about this place, this phenomenon, this country, if you will, this experiment, this society that I'm a part of, that I love. And I love deeply. And there are things about us. I've always found it interesting that the acronym for the United States of America got reduced down not just to USA, which is, we still use that quite a bit. USA, USA, USA. But it got reduced down to us, especially in writing. And I find some interesting coinky-dinky kind of like, isn't it neat and magical that one of the most common ways we refer to ourselves, that we refer to us as members of this great place called America is us. Yeah, it's neat. I always found that pretty curious and fascinating and positive. And I wondered if there was some... I doubted. I still, to this day, I don't think. But as a child, I wondered if there was some intent there. Certainly in choosing United and States, perhaps, because we were... Let me zoom back, because here's something fun and amazing about America. Or Trumptopia, as I like to call it now, given all the shenanigans in the Trump White House. But the citizens of this country have the, double whammy, self-contradicting attribute about themselves, and that's that they're deeply passionate, wildly in love with their country. USA, USA, America first. We love America is a thing. A part of being American is this wild, crazy love for it. This, this deep admiration for it. This almost hero worshipping of the country as entity. And yet, simultaneously, the vast majority of natural-born citizens in the United States of America know little to next to nothing to jack shit about the history of this place, of this country, of this event, of this societal structure that we're all part of. And I please forgive me. I am not trying to be antagonistic. I get it. I was in school. I was a bored teenager and younger. I was a bored youth at one time, and sitting in a classroom going, the fuck? Who gives a shit about these dates? And, 1776 and the Minta and the Nina and the Pinta and the Santa Maria. Who gives a fuck? I get it. What's fascinating to me is that it feels, and maybe I'm being cynical in my older age, it feels almost as though that's on purpose. It's not an accident that the vast majority of students, the overwhelming plurality of young people in school are bored to death and find especially history class exceedingly dull. You know why I don't think that's an accident? Because we used to have civics and other classroom content curriculum that was specifically about our responsibilities as participants in this democratic process, the laws that govern, etc., etc., etc. There used to be classrooms that have been cut and slashed and very quietly buried. And I was sort of triggered about this and reminded and kind of stoked up and thought, is this perfect for something to ad hoc throw into what is supposed to be primarily a 4th of July thing, because it ties in. For example, 4th of July fun fact that I bet very few American citizens are forefront aware of. And I challenge anybody listening now or in some future 4th of July to be A, really honest about whether or not you knew this, and B, ask with compassion and kindness and not that lording over each other kind of ridicule that we're so fond of in school. But ask, do you know the actual date of the actual Declaration of Independence? Because the 4th of July is not it. Much like the fact that Jesus was not born in December, we know that that's a historical fact, that Christ was not born in December on Christmas, because it is a matter of record that the Catholic Church, back when it was the only Christian church, there was no other church that was Christian, which is a fact that Christians forget, postmodern, what was it called? There was a name for this diversification of Christianity. I can't remember what it's called now. But there was an era during which, various people decided to break away from the mother church and create an independent and new Christianity. Just facts that are lost on people. The fact that we know it's a matter of record. The Catholic Church picked Christmas, December, and the specific dates for Christmas Eve and Christmas Day because of other factors and had nothing to do with Christ's birth. They acknowledged that they did not know when Christ was born. And most historians, most real, serious, hardcore historians of Catholicism will tell you, yeah, he was probably born in August, in the middle of the summer, because that was the trend in that era at the time, generally speaking. Most babies, the vast majority of them, were born in the summer. I think that's generally true nowadays, right? Like, we all huddle up in the winter. Anyways, I digress. I don't have a reference to that particular scientific factor and whatnot, but here's some historical facts. The actual date of the Declaration of Independence was the 2nd of July. And it was then sort of decided that the 4th of July would be the day that it would be celebrated and commemorated, because that was the day that after the signing and, the drafting and all that, it took so long to publish something. It wasn't like they could just inbox that shit to everybody or, Dropbox it, or they couldn't just post it on Facebook. They couldn't just Instagram. They couldn't post a selfie. It took them a few days to get it distributed. And another fun historical fact, the most common way that people received the news of the Declaration of Independence was by it being read out loud for entertainment's sake, I guess, or for pride's sake, for joy, for thrills, and for the sheer fact that the document was crafted in an era where there weren't as many distractions, so everything was meant to be orated, to be read aloud with passion and clarity, and a bit of theatricality. That was real. That was a common thing. That was considered a normal thing. Nowadays, anybody who speaks is called a bombast and a showboat, or anybody who orates, rather. And very few people know how to give great public speaking. And even the greats, I think, today might have had some stiff competition back in that era. Think about it. Because more people commonly addressed public discourse as something to do and to take seriously and to rehearse for and to practice and be prepared for. More so than most people do today. More so than most politicians. You can see it if you just think about the most obviously awkward and stupid moments of the political debates. While they are better public speakers than the average Joe Schmo on the streets today in America now, you take even a Barack Obama, who's incredibly well spoken. Strip away the issue of race and all that, and put him as a public speaker up against other public speakers from an era when public speaking was a massive, popular thing that was more than entertainment. It was important. Civic duty and all that. Like, they don't teach us that. Back to that, coming full circle, there's a lot of fun facts. And the news media loves to lord it over us, lord it over Americans, and also poke fun and make it just fine. It's okay that you don't know this. And maybe all of this dumbing down of America. I know I'm not the first to point this out. There's plenty of documentaries out there. Go Netflix this shit. Dumbing down of America, is an agenda that seems, however subtle and however very quiet it's been played out, seems pretty real. Here's another fun fact that is not discussed on college campuses, let alone, high school or junior high or elementary school campuses. In the 241 years of being a country, we have only, as a country, had 22 years of actual peace time. non-engagement in foreign conflict. Out of 241, there's only been 22 years where we can say that for the majority of that year, we as a nation were not caught up in some kind of war somewhere. All kinds of fun facts about the Founding Fathers and America and the history of. Did you know, and I'll wrap up, this is like my fun fact section for the segment today. Did you know that the Founding Fathers were not members of any particular party? There were political parties. They had radically different names than the ones we know today. And political parties were forming even this early on. But the founding, and of course, there were political parties were a known quantity and important to governance in other countries, especially particularly the country we were breaking away from. The Founding Fathers were, to the best of my understanding, unanimously against the establishment of political parties in the United States of America. They did not want that. They wanted Americans from the different places, different states in America, to nominate local members of their own communities to become, representatives in a self-governance that was about the whole country. This is one of the most salient and significant lost fun facts. Should have saved it for the end. I had another couple more sitting around. And I'll come back to this point about parties in a second to keep that peak where it belongs, which is at the end, really at the end of the segment. So another fun fact is that the President of the United States, as a job defined by the Constitution, is not the very first. It is not ranked the most important. It is not like a big deal. In fact, the very first instance of the term President of the United States is really quite odd. And something that I'm sure has been systematically not addressed, not pointed out to people on purpose. The position, the job, as described, because the Constitution of the United States defines certain key jobs in our government, this government, the American government, because it's trying to be different from, at the time, the Founding Fathers were trying to define a system that took the best from what they saw around the world in terms of democracy, other experiments in democracy, and then make this different from everything else in the rest of the world, right? The best of our understanding, historically speaking, that was one of the goals. The President of the United States is neither the second nor the third job. It is not celebrated. Today, and the point is, if you'll note, today, in our awareness of the way government seems to work, most people in the American public, most of the American electorate, the voters of the United States of America, they put primacy of emotional importance on POTUS. And then the rest of it is like a slippery slope of sliding scale of who gives a shit in terms of actively participating in the electoral, self-government process. The President of the United States as a job in the Constitution, it's neither fourth, it is the fifth job. Now, it may or may not be an order of importance, but it certainly can be seen that way. And the very, I don't have it in front of me, the notes. I remember this from a little bit of research, and it being pointed out quite curiously on Fox News yesterday in anticipation of their All America, All Patriotism coverage today. What do they call it? I wrote this down. Fox News. Oh, that's a different one. Oh, yeah. Proud America coverage is what they're calling their special programming today. Which is, and funny coincidence, by the way. I noticed that this happened on both Fox News and MSNBC. I didn't take the time to check CNN today before coming on. I just wanted to do a quick dip because I didn't think there would be any new real news, barring some crazy, we're actually in World War III now kind of thing. And I'm always a little, I don't want to say worried or anxious, just sort of, oh God, I won't be surprised at all if on American holidays that have to do with war, if we suddenly find ourselves at the tipping point announced on a holiday like that, like Memorial Day. It would just be so apropos. Right, so back to this fun fact about POTUS and the Constitution. It's the fifth job described in the Constitution, and the very first sentence is, to the best of my recollection, I can't claim to be one of those people that reads the Constitution all the time, but up there with the Bible and the Torah and the Quran, I have read it more than once, from cover to cover, very slowly, on purpose, very diligently, looking up words I did not understand. It was a long time ago. It's over 20 some odd years ago. Because it occurred to me, it was painfully obvious to me, that while we referenced it in our educational curriculums, in history classes and whatnot, and maybe we read a snippet from it or two sometimes, we never did a big delving, study of deep comprehension of the Constitution, or of other matters like the Bible, for example. I know that that's controversial. There's a lot of people who would say, no, the Bible should not be taught in school. And there's plenty of other people who should say, yes, only the Bible should be taught in school. And that's a can of worms for another day. But to the best of my recollection, the very first time the President of the United States is referenced in the Constitution, it reads, when the President of the United States is tried the Congress shall take the responsibility of approving or something like that, commencing impeachment process. And they talk about this a lot, especially around presidents like Trump and Nixon, about whether or not impeachment is a possible thing. And people often forget, Donald Trump was not impeached officially. They began impeachment procedures, and then he quit. He resigned. So it wasn't like he was successfully ousted from office through impeachment. The impeachment process is something that the United States of America has actually only issued one time successfully, I believe, and that's crap. I had his name earlier. There's one president before Nixon that was impeached, and then Nixon, the proceedings began, and then he stepped down. I can't remember the previous president's name. It was a long time ago. And there I go. It's something that I had to go look up in the first place out of curiosity, and then since then forgot. It was not something that I was taught. We don't get taught very much in school about the history of our own country, and I wonder how much less will be taught in school about the future of Trumptopia. Let me give you one other sort of not historical but rather present and very urgent fact about fun fact that very few people know about the 4th of July that might, should it go viral, literally cause a big cultural discussion about whether or not we should continue to celebrate the 4th of July the way we do. And by the way we do, I unfortunately mean fireworks. And I know I'm late to the party about fireworks from China. Haha. Isn't it ironic? I get it. I not only do I get it, I know that I'm not originating that thought, and that's not where I'm going. Although, tip of the hat to everybody out there who's reminding everybody who's celebrating freedom in America that probably upwards of 90% of the fireworks being used to celebrate were manufactured in China. Not here in the United States. Probably. I don't know. That's out of my ass figure. I'll acknowledge that right now. But let's just leave it simply at plurality, approaching a majority of the fireworks will be from China. And that's not my point. My point is this. Here's a fun fact. Here's a thing that really should alarm you, my dear listener, or listeners, if there's more than one of you out there. And it's hard to talk about because, honestly, I love fireworks. The China thing, I'm like, yeah, whatever. It's a global economy anyways. We should really transcend statist thinking on top of that and just live as a planet. But that's a whole different direction that we probably labeled as anti-4th of July and anti-American by hardcore Trumptopians. But here's the fact. This alarms me, and this really makes me want to, like, for example, I want to protest fireworks shows. I'm at 60%, like, I might just very well do so. Why? Here's the fun fact. It's alarming, it's scary, it's disturbing, it's disgusting, it's gross. 258 million pounds of toxic, more than likely carcinogenic, although that wasn't part of the thing I looked up, or that I saw on the news, rather. I'm adding the toxic carcinogenic thing as commentary that probably is, although who knows, right? Maybe it's not. But odds are, given the propensity for American corporations to make things and not let us know that they're toxic, and then remembering that they're from China, where they love to put lead in everything for no fucking reason, and then remembering that the chemistry of fireworks requires toxic chemicals to burn, which usually renders highly toxic waste. 258 million pounds of this particulate matter is dumped into our skies, our air, every 4th of July. And I know that may be a drop in the bucket compared to the particulate matter that comes off our rubber tires every day, Americaning down the freeway, working jobs that barely pay us enough to get there and back. But that's a lot harder to stop all at once. We could go from fireworks shows to laser beams in 1 year if America pushed hard enough and just acknowledged that fireworks suck. They're bad for the environment. They're bad for our bodies because we're breathing this shit in. 258 million pounds in one night every year. I get it. The counter argument's like, fuck it, never mind. The waste from this plus that outweighs it tenfold. I know. But if we're going to be serious about transitioning from a toxic and self-destructive way of life, way of running businesses, way of doing everything every day, then we got to start putting our foot down on really grandiose and specific examples and going, hey guys, we need to fix this right now and take it seriously, not just keep going mindlessly and waving our flags and enjoying the fireworks and breathing the toxic shit in. Okay. So that's a thing. That's a fun fact. I want to get back real quick because I'm spending the entire episode on these fun facts and I haven't even gotten to the other stuff I was going to talk about. I guess I'm slowly working my way through my notes. Oh, really quick, yeah, a social shout-out, non-commercial endorsement. Like, I am endorsing the following thing, even though it's a bit conflicting. As always, my worldview is nothing like the black and or white, status-driven, us versus them kind of mentality that most people have, because I've spent the last 20 years of my life trying to liberate myself from the dumbest of the brainwashing. I'm sure I still got more brainwashing to expunge. But when it comes to divisive us versus them things, I don't run with most of the packs, okay? That's why I feel confident that I can make this shout out and probably sound like a hypocrite to people, but still mean it and be sincere about it. And I'll explain why I feel this way in just a second, but let me actually make this shout out instead of interrupting myself. I want to make a heartfelt, sincere shout out to an organization called Warrior Games. Counterintuitively, right? Because I'm a pacifist, I'm against war, I'm against profiteering, I'm against taking advantage of ourselves. But I saw a snippet of this on some news or another. Might have been Fox. I'm not partisan that way. I don't care which news source. If it's real, it's real. If it's fake, it's fake. They all have a mix, right? It's not 100% fake. It's not 100% real. So somebody was covering this group. I hope that they aren't profiteering. I pray to whatever divinity is out there, and I pray more directly to the higher powers, to the higher selves of those individuals involved that run this organization, that they are not profiteering on those that they're trying to serve. But it seems pretty legit. It's an organization, apparently, and I think a nonprofit. I could be wrong, but that has a corporate partnership with some for-profit corporation. I can't remember the name of, but the event / organization is called Warrior Games, and they organize a Olympic style competition for injured and handicapped veterans, coping with returning to, quote unquote normal life after being bodily injured in service to the war machine. And I was having a conversation with someone on social media, private chat. Might have been on a dating site like a week ago. Because, it was a dating site, as a matter of fact. Not to embarrass this person, or I'm not criticizing this woman, but I matched with a woman who, quite frankly, in my opinion, was out of my league. And I'm not really looking for a girlfriend, really. I'm just there on that kind of dating social media to make social connections. I really want to meet friends, but that's a whole sidebar. It's got nothing to do with today's episode. But we got into a discussion. She's in active duty service in the military, and I said, hey, we can be friends, but I'm not sure that you'll enjoy I don't think you really want to date me, hot lady. You're out of my league. She really is. Like, I'm okay looking. I'm like maybe a strong 6.5, maybe a weak 7, right? On a 1 to 10 scale of attraction. Obviously, I'm rating myself, so I'm going to rate it favorably. But this really, really hot, unless it was a fake profile and they were trolling me, or they're out there doing some weird troll, they ultimately unmatched. So I think I have to take her seriously because we had a deep discussion, right? She was really hot, out of my league, in the Army. And interested, had read my profile. My profile basically says, giving up on dating, just looking for fans of my podcast, and maybe a co-host. Because I'm pretty specifically hoping for a female co-host. Not for any kind of scam on them, hey, a sexy lady is my co-host kind of reasons, but really quite shallow reasons that I know I don't think I am this shallow, but it's a matter of fact. A sexy lady talking with me about this stuff will sell, will attract more audience, will make this show much more popular. Me and another dude might appeal more strongly than me by myself, but me with a sexy lady with a sexy voice that looks sexy, that therefore when we do photo, it's just not, it isn't me standing around looking awkward, it's me looking goofy next to this hot chick. Boom. I currently have 1 follower on Sprecher, and a small group of listeners. I benefit of the doubt, I think it's more than 2 people that are slowly listening to my podcasts, probably all out of order, I think, or I don't know how they're doing it, but my numbers keep going up on Sprecher. On YouTube, not quite as often, but I think right now I'm on a daily listen number. The number moves up, which is cool, and thank you guys. Shout out to you guys. And I'm totally spinning out of control with my shout out section. The point of the whole sidebar about the female co-host was I was having this discussion with this woman in the military, in the Army, and I was flattered that she matched with me. She's like, you're very attractive, and I'm like, all right, you're either a fake profile, a troll of some kind, or wow, I'm a really lucky guy. But I tragically felt really guilty because I don't think that I could be a great life partner to her, because I would be constantly criticizing the military-industrial complex, talking about how this country is addicted to war and in self-denial about it, talking about how, and we got into this. She's a Christian, right? She self-identifies as Christian on her profile. I'm like, you might not appreciate this either, what I've got to say about Christianity in America today, because I was raised Catholic, which a lot of Christians don't consider officially Christian, which is a whole funny, crazy us versus them bullshit thing, because y'all supposed to both be believing in Jesus, right? And I was very serious about it for a long time, etc. And then I left the church, and I have a lot of criticism of organized religion at large. And I laid down like as unoffensive of a version of my basic elevator talk about the interconnection between war, propaganda conditioning us to accept war and to be proud of war and to look forward to the next war, how that is all part of the statist system here in America / Trumptopia, and that and that Christianity in America has been hijacked because there is no way in hell, which is a funny term to use in this sentence, there's no way in hell that Jesus Christ, the actual Jesus Christ, would be pro-gun, pro-imperialist, statist, endless war. There's just no way. And yet, Bible-thumping, Jesus-loving, gun-owning patriots love war and love conflict and love it when presidents like Donald Trump rattle the saber and threaten other people with annihilation. The entire extreme right wing, theoretically, is full of Christians. Right? So anyways, we got to this point in the discussion, and she was very open-minded about it. And she actually said, wow, instead of being angry and calling me lacking patriotism or, how this is all un-American, she was like, I'm going to have to think about this because your words are impacting me. It's not a direct quote. I'm paraphrasing her intent. Right? So she was like, at first she was trying to tell me where I stood. And I'm like, no, you're wrong. You're making assumptions and that's not where I am. Like, she said, well, you don't support the troops. I'm like, dead wrong. The troops are human beings. I don't support the system that converts those human beings into trained murderers for patriotism, right? For statist goals, because that's what it does. That's what the entire military-industrial complex is about. It's about turning a human being into a willing murderer. And we've called it warrior so that we can take some pride. We can co-opt some indigenous language because they were warriors too, but they were warriors of a different kind, generally speaking. Although we paint them as savages, that's a whole other bullshit thing about America and the negative propaganda. It's the United States from its inception has targeted some minority group, categorized them as inhuman or subhuman, and abused them. We always have. We continue to seek out trying to do it now as an institution. It's part of our institutional psychology. Okay? Here's another fun fact that Americans don't... Oh, I want to finish. Warrior Games, the reason I'm giving them a shout-out, and a shout-out to that lady. I don't know if she's checking out my podcast, but if for some freaky reason she does and she listens to this episode, I want to tell her, hey, I was really honored that you matched with me. You're really out of my league, and it was really... it was a good feeling to be attractive to you, because I'm often not attractive to women of that level of hotness, like I'm just not hot enough. They want a Brad Pitt and I'm just sort of I don't have a good example. I don't have a good actor's name to bust out as to who I look like more. Anyways, let's not get caught up in that rabbit hole. So shout out to you and thank you for your honesty in your conversation there. And know that I'm sharing this on the show in case that woman is listening, not to judge you or not to ridicule you, but to celebrate the fact that we were able to have that conversation and say thank you. I hope I didn't offend you, and I hope that you unmatched with me only because you agreed that you weren't ready and that you and I would not have a great relationship. I was hoping we could still be friends. At any rate, Warrior Games. I'm still even talked about the serious stuff I want to talk about. I'm going to do a second segment because we got like 5 minutes left. I'm just going to be on all day probably. Warrior Games seems to actually be healing people. Because when someone's injured in a war, replacing their limb with a robotic thing is not the end of their healing. They are still psychologically traumatized, and they are emotionally traumatized, and they are spiritually traumatized. I'm anti-war, but I am pro the human beings that have been bullied into going and surviving the war. Right? Because they are human beings. They are my brothers and sisters in the species. And I haven't been in a war zone, And I haven't, I don't want to disrespect those who believe that we really live in great danger. I don't think that we do. I think the danger comes from those who are profiteering on the manufacture and sale of the machines of death and murder to both sides of everybody involved in every conflict. That's who we're living in danger from, not the people that have been designated the enemies. And some of the things that I talked about with that woman on, I think we were on Bumbler. She was like, well, how else would we have peace? And I was like, listen, you're a Christian. I say this with love and compassion to you. Peace will never be achieved by going and murdering, killing people, groups of people or individuals that government says these guys are the bad guys. That's not how we're ever going to achieve peace. Even if those bad guys were really bad guys, all we've done is piss off their community and their children and their grandchildren and created more bad guys. Because by killing that person, we were the bad guy. Here's the thing that people don't understand. Oh, and I said this to her. I said to this woman, and I think it really impacted her. The commandment says, thou shalt not kill. Period. Now, that leaves a lot of room for debate, I suppose. And I don't want to be a literalist because I'm against a literalist approach to the Bible. I really don't think that it is supposed to be literal. And I'm not a literalist when it comes to the commandments either. I'm a contextualist. If I had to coin a term. There's a context for which the rules and stuff that are littered throughout the Bible besides the... But let's take this one at face value. Thou shalt not kill. It doesn't say thou shalt not kill excepting those that have pissed you off and or your government and therefore you decided that they're bad guys. And it doesn't say thou shalt not kill except for in self-defense. Now, that seems really radical and crazy and un-American to say, but this is supposed to be a Christian nation. Is it not? Is it not? Okay, what did Jesus do? Did Jesus ever kill anybody? No. He saved people's lives. He healed people, and, if we're going to take it at face value, he raised somebody from the dead. Is that or is that not? Let's not get lost in the argument about whether or not Jesus existed or whether or not Jesus did it. Let's talk about holding people accountable who claim that this is what they believe in and where they get their morals. Is not what Jesus did, thereby teaching us by example the exact opposite of loving guns, loving militarism, loving hating other countries, hating other cultures, and wanting to go to kill them? Is that, or is that not, the exact opposite? These are opposites, right? Oh, I'm running out of time. I'm going to have to come back. Happy 4th of July, my friends. Just remember that this holiday is about celebrating war and killing people to get what you want. Because that's what the entire history of the United States is. First, a final fun fact about the 4th of July, well, I got a minute left. The original 13 colonies were corporations. Yes, that's right, you heard me. They were LLCs, or the equivalent of in that era. They were corporations. They were for-profit corporations. Let that sink in. And mind you, that didn't really go away. That should be self-evident, right? Look at our politics today. It's really pro-corporate. Corporations have now radically been given free speech rights. Happy 4th of July, folks. Let that sink in while you drink toxic beer and eat toxic hot dogs and inhale the glorious toxic waste of all those fireworks. Peace, love, and grooviness be with you. Forgive me for the deeply ironic and kind of harsh ending to this segment. I'll be back for a second half on this one because it is the 4th of July, and here's what we're going to do and talk about all day long. I got 16 seconds left. I'm going to play you out with some Maple Leaf Right just because it's the easiest one to push play on. And thanks for listening. Peace out.